And it appears we are live. And I am here with Mike Korn. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Now, Mike is one of the most regular contributors to Music Street Journal and one of the earliest contributors to Music Street Journal. Um, Maybe you want to talk about how you got doing MSJ um, first, and obviously you're going to need to talk about Wormwood to get into that. So why
Well,
don't you?
there's two things I remember. I remember actually very well the first time I met you in the flesh. That was at Rock Valley College. Probably I'm guessing around '97 or '98, where we just met when we were walking. And I don't know how the conversation started, but it somehow turned to music. And
I don't see. I don't remember that at all. The
I,
the first the
I,
first time I remember was at the BOC thing.
that was the second thing I was going to
Oh
bring up.
wow!
But when it was we're Rock Valley College, what impressed me is you knew who Man of War were, and I said, well, this is a guy that knows more than what's played on the radio. Then it has a little now, and then the meetup at the old on the waterfront for the Blue Oyster Cult show is definitely the next big thing. And
Yeah, that was strange. I don't know about you, but I've never done another group interview like that. That was so weird.
Me neither. I've been at a couple of what you call press conferences at the old Milwaukee Metal Fest, where
Uh,
they'll have a band talk to a bunch of journalists and you raise your hand and get to ask them a question. I did a couple of those, but nothing really like with Blue Oyster called it on the waterfront.
I
And
guess I guess we should probably, for those who don't know, we should probably explain that it was we both were signed up to interview BOC. Well, it was Eric Bloom and Buck Dharma, and we were signed up to interview them at Rockford's on the Waterfront Festival. And when we show up, it turns out there are, I don't know, what were there, half a dozen journalists there, maybe a little more.
I'd say about eight.
Yeah, and all there to do an interview at the same time, and we got to ask our questions. But it was really an odd thing. I've never been to one of those before or
Oh,
since.
it was odd, but that was the very early days for Wormwood and MSJ both, and it was certainly a big deal to even do it that way. I
Oh yeah,
remember I remember frantically running around that day. It was an exhausting day because I didn't know until that morning that my press credentials would get me behind the scenes to do the interview. And I remember BOC security detail was a pretty tough crew. I mean, they've used like Hell's Angels guys forever for that, and so I had to kind of run that gauntlet, and uh, but it was all worth it. It was an exhausting day, but it was a very frantic day. Um, the exact questions and answers I can't exactly bring to my mind, but I remember one thing very specifically. I was wearing an old T-shirt that I got up at the Mall of America, sort of this green washed out close up of Godzilla. And Buck Dharma, he said that's a pretty cool shirt. He said,
I remember that.
where did you get that shirt? And I said, I got it at the old Starlog store up at the Mall of America. And I don't know whether it was I asked him or whether you asked him, but he said, well, what happened to the giant Godzilla that you used to have behind, play behind the drum kit for all those years? And I think Buck said, well, he's in a landfill somewhere in Schenectady or something like that.
Yeah, actually, and I remember one question somebody asked, who was obviously somebody who didn't go very deep into BOC's catalog,
No.
but she asked him, "Is Don't Fear the Reaper about a vampire?" And it's like, okay then,
Yeah, well, that's probably someone from the Register Star, is my
probably was.
uh, because that's about as deep as most of their interviews ever got with
Yeah.
musical people. But it was interesting. I think I asked them something about their work with they work with some popular sci-fi authors. You know,
Yeah.
Michael Moorcock wrote
Right.
lyrics for some of their well-known songs, and there was another guy named John Shirley that
Yes.
wrote some lyrics for him. And I know I asked him about that if they ever met him, and I don't think they ever met Moorcock in the flesh. But I think Shirley was from New York, so then they knew. I might be getting that wrong, but that's the way I remember it.
Well, I remember I asked if Susie, who shows up in a lot of the lyrics, was a real person, and I remember Buck said that she was, but he didn't go into any detail about who it was.
Yeah, that's that. They remain the band that I've seen in concert the most, including just last year up at Summerfest in Milwaukee. I went to go see them, and it's been a long trip for them. I mean, I enjoy watching them, but I'm sure you were at that show they played with Foghat opening at the Metro Center. That was
Yes,
that was one of the best concerts I've ever seen
that
anywhere.
was the Blue Oyster Cult part of the concert was great. I wasn't impressed with Foghat live, but
I didn't have no trouble with Foghat at all,
they kind of bored me. But
especially Dave Peverett. He has one of the best voices I feel
yeah,
for classic rock music. But that crowd was keyed up right from
oh
the
yeah,
get go. And I told the guys I went last year with a Summerfest. They both went with me to that show, and I said, "Fellas, you realize you're not going to see anything like that tonight." Uh, and they said, yeah, we know. It's just, I really thought around '84 when they were doing Fire Unknown Origin, I thought they were set to be one of the biggest bands in American rock history, and yet after that they never really got back on the beam. Uh,
yeah.
they released good albums, but they never recovered the peak of what they had then. They could sell out any arena in
Oh yeah.
'84.
Did you see the Young at Heart Festival show when it was snowing by the end of the show?
I saw them play at Young and Art. Yeah,
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 there was snow coming down by the end of the show. We're outside, and it's snowing around us. I remember
yeah,
that.
yeah. That had to probably be their low point, is my guess. I mean, that's
Yeah,
like playing the Rock and Rib Fest or something like that.
yeah,
But it's just that Young at Heart on the waterfront. There is nothing like that no more. There's no.
no,
They're getting rid of anything where human beings meet in person in the flesh is being wiped out. I mean, they're going to close. They're closing Rockford Speedway now. You know,
yeah.
uh, it's
And BOC played Speedway with Black Sabbath. I was not there, but they played that. They played a show
I
there.
saw it. I saw it. The strangest, druggiest show I've ever been at.
I have no idea. I was thinking about it the other day. I have no idea why I didn't go to that show because I love both of those bands. I don't know why I didn't go, but I didn't.
It was an indescribably strange day. For one thing, it was right after a major storm, so the parking lot where they got that clinic now, that was just a farmer's field, and
Oh yeah.
that's where all the vehicles parked, and it was, I mean, it was death getting in and out of that field.
Oh
And
god.
I never saw another concert where so many people were completely zoned on drugs as I did at this one. I mean, there were guys trying to swim in a puddle.
Oh,
Uh,
jeez.
I didn't even have the key out of my car before a guy was trying to sell me Quaaludes.
Oh
Uh,
my God.
People were hanging off of the telephone poles in the middle of the field. Uh, it was a great show for Blue Oyster Cult, not so much for Black Sabbath. One of the bands they had an opening band, Shakin' Street, that never showed up.
Oh, gee.
They just simply didn't show up. And by weird coincidence, we were talking about Man of War before. That was Ross the Boss's last band before he joined Man of War.
Oh, really?
It was Shakin' Street,
Yeah.
and Molly Hatchet opened up for him.
Oh,
And
that's right.
yeah, we I had a lot of fun that day, but wow, it was a. I mean, Ronnie Dio just disappeared in the middle of Sabbath set for a good 20, 25 minutes.
Did he really?
Yeah, and Iommi just sat there improvising, playing some sort of solo, that reminds me out of like, well, this is a Spinal Tap Mark II.
Well, I
I,
mean, the early days of Sabbath, they did a lot of long jams. I remember
oh
hearing,
yeah,
like back when they were still Earth, I think, and they said that they only had, maybe an hour's worth of songs, and they had to play for like 2.5, 3 hours. So they play the same songs over, and they do these long extended blues jams, and
yeah, and a lot of covers as well
yeah,
from bands you wouldn't think of. But
yeah.
oddly enough, I think this probably runs at Music Street Journal. I know it does at Wormwood. Is one of my earliest interviews was with Ronnie James Dio, and I talked to him about that day, and I thought he wouldn't remember a thing. He had a very clear memory of playing that
Wow.
show. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
wasn't that when you and I went to see Dio and we met him afterwards? I think that's when you set up the interview, right?
No, I think that was after. That was
Oh, really?
a couple of years after. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I asked him. I said, "Well, do you remember the show you did with Blue Oyster called it the Rockford Speedway around 1980? I think it was 80. Could have been 80, 81." Uh, and I said, "Well, you disappeared for an extended period of time. What was the story behind that?" And he said, "Well, I think we were in our more indulgent phase during that time. But yeah, it was a real honor to go meet him. We went to
Oh,
House
that was.
and we were. I think it was like 2:33 in the morning when we finally went up and met the band, and I think we were both shocked, and he looked as fresh as a daisy.
Oh,
Uh,
I know. He was so nice, just so nice.
Very, very nice. I shook his hand. I said, real pleased to meet you, Mr. Dio. And he said, call me Ronnie. Uh, we also talked with Jimmy Bain, the bass player. He's now also passed on. And Craig Goldie, who was his guitarist at that time, also a very nice guy. I don't know who Goldie's playing for now. It's some band. I don't want to guess unless I really know. But
Yeah.
that was a memorable thing we did together. Was
Oh, yeah.
go cover that. Now, who opened up? Was it Doro that opened up for
Was
Dio?
it? And then wasn't it Ingve? Didn't Ingve play as well?
Who?
Ingve.
Oh, yeah. Well, was it Ingve? Did he open for Dio or did he open for Queensryche when we saw him in Chicago?
I thought it was Doro first, then Ingve, and then Dio. I
I
think.
think you probably got it right. Yeah.
I know. I got to go backstage before the show and meet Doro because I had interviewed her, and they arranged for me to go back and meet her, and she was super nice too.
That's always heard, and she can really talk your ear off as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
she was really nice.
we've had a few interviews with her at Wormwood, and always had a lot to say. Always had a lot of funny stories. I, I, I think that was a show where she come out belting in the first couple of songs, and she was wearing some sort of super tight top, and she busted out of it for like a second and turned
You know what's funny? I heard about that, and I
Yeah,
didn't see it. I was taking pictures of somebody else in the band at the time.
she was an attractive lady even at that point. But
There was another photographer I knew who was shooting at that show, and he told me about it. He had a picture of it, but
yeah, that's a good long time ago now. I haven't been in a house of blues in probably more than 10 years now.
oh,
Uh,
it's been much longer than that for me, I
they
think.
they don't if they run any metal and rock shows that I want to see, I don't hear about it.
I think
Uh,
the last show I saw there might have been Alice Cooper, but I'm not sure.
I saw Carcass. There was one of the last shows that I saw. Their security was always pretty obnoxious. Uh,
Oh, I can tell you a story. This was an absolute trip because I went there, and I know a lot of people don't like the band ABC, but I happen to like them, and I was covering ABC, and I had arranged for tickets and a photo pass. I get there, and they didn't have a photo pass for me, so I had him get in touch with the tour manager. He comes out, hands me a laminated tour photo pass, and he says, "Here you go." He's like, "It won't do any good though. They won't even let our photographer shoot." And
yeah.
they wouldn't let anybody shoot pictures. It was all the House of Blues people.
Remember the hoops we had to jump through for that Dio show?
I think so.
And we stuck with it. And I told the guy there, I think we wound up getting the tour manager involved, and that helped. I said, what the hell band doesn't want to get press coverage? What band doesn't want to get photographs or get something written about? It doesn't make any sense to throw up. Sure, you got to check to make sure people are who they say they are, you know.
Yeah,
But after that, what's the point to it rather than you proving that you're some kind of tough guy or something?
yeah, and you don't. What I've found, you and I both, I'm sure, have lots of stories of dealing with the people who take the credentials and make sure you get in and stuff. But what I've found is places like the House of Blues was notoriously bad in those days.
Yeah, yeah,
But the full time concert venues tend to not be bad. It's when you get in, not as bad anyway. It's when you get into the places like Waterfront that have basically weekend warriors doing the stuff there. They're not really the guys who normally do that. That you get into the biggest problem, I think, a lot of times because they just don't know what they're doing. They're kind of thrown into it, and they're like, "Wow, nobody told me how to do this." But I think the worst one ever I had at Waterfront was I was supposed to cover Cheap Trick, and I had an email that was printed out that came from Cheap Trick's publicist. She had sent it to me, and she had been emailing with the guy from Waterfront, right? And I've got it in my hands printed out, and I'm sitting there talking to this dude, and I'm like, "Look, here's the email. It says I'm approved." And I'm showing him the email, and he's like, "Yep, can't help you." And I was like, looked at him, and I said, "Wait, what's your name?" And he gave me his name. I'm like, "That email's from you, and it says I'm approved." He's like, "Can't do anything for you." So I left. I mean, there was nothing else you can do at that point.
yeah. It's. Well, I would have said, who do you take orders from?
Well, he was like the head of it all. He was like, I think at the time he was the director of the Metro Center, actually. So
It wasn't Doug Logan.
no, it wasn't Doug Logan. It was somebody else. I can't even remember the guy's name anymore. But it was no, Doug wouldn't have done that. Doug's a good guy.
I don't know. That Ozzy Osbourne debacle where he croaked out two songs and then passed out. A refund was in order after that. I mean, you don't have people paying a lot of money to see a guy croak, do a horrible job for two songs and then disappear, and then
They
uh,
didn't do refunds.
no,
Oh
no.
wow, I didn't know
I
that.
was I was pissed. A lot of people were pissed after
The
that.
funny, the funny thing about that show was I had tickets for that show, And I woke up that morning and I thought, something just doesn't feel right about this show. And I sold my tickets to somebody that day. And then that happened. And I was like, wow, I guess I called
That
that one.
that kind of put Rockford on the map for a while because Ozzy was in St. Anthony's Hospital for a good bit.
Yeah.
There was something to do with him biting the bat's head off or something like that.
Bad reaction to the rabies shot. I thought I
Yeah,
heard, but then I swear I looked it up later and it was something else they said, but I don't know.
well, I wouldn't trust much of what they would say uh,
Yeah.
because I mean you're dealing with Sharon Osbourne publicity control, so that right there is pretty much all you need to know.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Okay, just so in case anybody who knows Sharon is watching this, please don't sue us.
yeah,
We have nothing to sue us for.
Doug Logan come out after that debacle and said, "Well, we're going to chant Ozzy's name up the roof at this point." I tell you, I said with me and the guys I went, we were chanting, but we were chanting for a refund, not for Ozzy. That was very. There were a lot of upset people leaving the Metro Center that night. I couldn't even tell you the last time I saw a musical show at the Metro Center. It's got to be going. I think I might have seen one after you and me went to see Judas Priest and Anthrax there. I might have seen one, but not too many. I know I saw a Metallica headline and show there, but that I think was after that. But yeah,
Last time I was at the Metro Center, I think was 2014 or 2015, maybe.
that's
A big
way
trip.
yeah. It's a sad situation all around. I mean, Coronado used to have some interesting rock shows. Well, now they have cover bands or bands pretending to be
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah, tribute bands.
Yeah, who?
They had wasn't Gordon Lightfoot was back again? Not a rock show, but
Yeah,
he is pretty cool. He
he
was back again recently.
yeah he was there. That I remember. But it's not like it was. I remember seeing the Misfits there one time, and the place almost got torn apart.
Well, I just saw Black Flag is coming to the Apollo in Belvedere.
Yeah, it's Black Flag, but don't don't look to see Henry or
No, no, no. Henry's been out of the band for ages, I think.
yeah
I don't even recognize any of the names of who's in the
yeah.
band anymore.
I might have a mild interest. I may go see that. It's a day of the week that I can. We'll have to see what's coming up.
They get a lot of good shows there.
I
I'm
give
pretty
them
impressed.
I give them credit. There's a bunch that are horrible, but the guy is trying variety, and he really gets some underground shows. I mean, I last went in December to see the Cannibal Corpse tour there, and that was like on a Monday night, and man, the place was packed, and they were packed for the first band on a 4-band bill, and
Wow.
that really surprised me. And every band got a great response. I just put the review up just a couple of weeks ago on Wormwood, but for Monday night in winter, I think there were maybe only 50 or so shy of a sellout.
Well,
Uh,
you know what that tells me? That tells me that the market is there for shows like that, but there just aren't places doing them anymore.
well, you have to want to do it, and the guy that books them and runs the club there wants to do it, wants to cater to the audience. And
Yeah.
like when he gets that response, he signed up more. I mean, I'm going to go in a press bash at the end of March because Morbid Angel is going to be there.
You and I saw them with Motorhead, right?
I think they opened up in Otto's. I'm pretty sure Otto's is defunct.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think Otto's is gone. I think I heard that.
that was quite a happening club for quite a while. Uh,
Yeah.
we're living in an age. I mean, man, when a big college town can't even bring in acts, it's getting desperate. I mean, really, like NIU, they should have more than enough people to support a club such as that. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is, but
I don't know. You would think it would be perfect. Any place where there's a big college, there should be a thriving music scene. That's
you would.
the way it's been for decades and decades.
I
Uh,
wonder if it's. I wonder if it's because it's all hip hop and stuff these days, and not rock bands
some
anymore.
some some nitwit playing a laptop, instead of a band, some guy pressing buttons on a laptop. No wonder people don't show up. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. It's ages social media is really taking a toll on things. Um, but yep, I'm trying to think of other stuff. We saw quite a few for a time. Apollo, they got a couple other shows. There's one I wouldn't mind going to see, but I have to work. Soulfly.
Oh, those
Uh,
guys are good. I think I saw them at Ozfest once.
yeah. Well, that's two of the two Cavalera brothers that used to be in Sepultura. That's
Right.
their band, but Soulfly has been a going concern for geez, close to 20 years now. So they're not exactly a new band, and uh, there was something else there that I wanted to see. Sometimes they get these. I hate to date myself, but they get these bands that must be getting a high school crowd or something because I I can't rec. There's one called Drugs that's going to be playing there, and I don't have a clue who they are. But then
Well, I mean, let me say this: if they're actually playing rock music, then I'm glad because I'm glad that young people are still into rock music.
if they're
Um,
playing the guitar, yeah,
yeah, yeah. Like you know what? I mean, a lot of people slag Greta Van Fleet for being Zepp clones, and I see it. Like they definitely draw from a lot of the same place that Zeppelin did. But then again, Zeppelin weren't all that original either. But the very fact that you got a bunch of young guys like that going out and doing that kind of rock and roll, to me, is really a good sign that rock is still alive. And
yeah.
that younger people actually like it.
I tell you what, I I used to have a security job where I worked at UPS at the station where we let the big trucks in. We were checking the big trucks in and out and wanding the employees in and out. And they had like WZOK playing there all the time. I'll tell you, after a couple of hours of that, you're on your knees praying for Nickelback to get on. I mean, it really puts things in perspective. If it's all stuff that sounds like it ought to be in the halftime show at the Super Bowl, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't like the music that's all completely computer done and sampled and stuff. I don't like that at
well,
all.
that's
It
that's
just
that's there are kind of industrial and electro type bands that I like,
yeah,
but I'm very specific about it. And I don't put stuff like Skinny Puppy or Frontline Assembly in the same basket as,
no.
ones where they're just sampling other people's music.
Well,
Uh,
one of my friends pointed out the other day something that I didn't realize, and I don't remember that Max Maven maybe is the guy's name. Um, but the hit singles. If you look, like so many of them are written by this one guy, and he produces them. And
there's
um,
the two guys
there are
from,
two guys. Max Maven is, I think, is his name, is one of them.
I think they're from
And if,
Sweden or Switzerland.
yeah, he's from Sweden. And if you look at the list of songs and artists, and what he does is he'll write the song, and then much like Elvis Presley used to do. For a price, this guy gives the artist a songwriting credit on it, but really he's the one who wrote it.
Yeah, it's
And, so it's like there's no wonder a lot of these songs all sound alike. They're all getting written by the same guy.
it's all assembly line crap.
Yep.
I mean, there's zero heart in it. The drum, I can spot a triggered drum or a sampled drum a mile off. I mean,
Yeah, I can't usually. I mean, sometimes I can spot a drum machine type thing, but a lot of times I can't.
when you
Um,
listen to a lot of heavy metal, especially underground heavy metal, you can spot it very quickly. Uh, a lot of times it's I don't want to name the bands, but if it sounds like a machine gun, chances are that's what you're listening to is something that's boosted and digitized. Or,
yeah,
although I have seen guys that can play faster than a machine, uh, some pretty amazing stuff. But a normal organic drum sound is pretty easy to spot in comparison with something.
I think part of it is I don't listen to drums that much. Drums to me don't do that much for me,
I,
except with a few exceptions. There are some drummers I do pay attention to.
I would have said the same for a long time, but I've now listened to such a huge volume of stuff that I pick it up through osmosis.
Yeah,
Just from the sheer volume of what I listen to, you begin to become more of an expert on things and how they sound and how they're done. Uh, as far as actually knowing music theory and playing stuff, I'd be the last person in the world to talk to. I mean,
yeah. You've never played any instruments or anything, right?
I was used to do a good trombone at one time.
Oh,
Uh,
hey,
I would have liked to try. I would like to try bass guitar. I tried that for a while, but I don't have no finger coordination. Ironically, one of the things that I think I might have had half a chance at would have been the drums, but we're not going to know now. Also, harmonica, I could kind of blow something on that, but a lot of that's pretty. Harmonica is pretty easy.
yeah. I could one instrument I could never play was the drums because it's too much of doing one thing with this hand, something else with this hand, and something else with your foot. I can't coordinate that.
Well, the real
Guitar or a bass or something or keyboards, I can play those things reasonably well, but the drums, nope.
Yeah, no, I pick up everything through listening, not through actually playing. Uh,
And I think to some degree, writing about music without actually understanding how to play it and getting involved in playing it, there's a certain charm to that and there's a certain value to that because you're hearing it as the average non-musician listener would,
well,
not as a musician.
that's kind of the way I write my reviews.
Yeah,
I write them normal. I see a lot of people that, matter of fact, majority of people are a lot better writers than I am. I mean, I've read other metal review sites and rock review sites. I read that. Um, I try to keep it fairly concise. Like, I don't like to have my reviews go much more than 3 paragraphs most of the time, although there's an exception. I mean, I just did a review for the new Enslaved album, and that's a band that's impossible to talk about their music without going into tons of detail because they are one of the top, when I think one of the top progressive metal bands, that's the name I think of. They're as good as talented as anybody, and there's so many different layers to their songs that you're almost forced to write about all the different things that go into them. So I kind of lost my track on that, but I think a lot of people would. One thing I always tried to do since the beginning up until today is if I listen to a really great album, I try to find one thing that maybe is not so great in it. And if I listen to a really horrible album, I try to find one thing that maybe they are good at or they do well, you know. And it's very rare that I come across a band that I slam 100%. I put up a review for one of those last night, but I mean it's that doesn't happen very often.
And I should point out that for Music Street Journal, we don't do negative reviews. If you don't, if something isn't more liked than disliked, we don't even run it. But Wormwood does do negative reviews, and I think I've done. I know I've done some negative movie reviews there. I don't know if I've done any negative music reviews or not. I don't
Well,
think so.
as long as it's written with some kind of intelligence,
Yeah.
I don't have no trouble with it. I mean, the people, especially with the sheer volume of stuff coming across your desk these days, I think even the PR people know there's no way you're going to hit it 100% of the time. A lot of them understand that. There's been several that I've done that I won't. They were so bad that I won't inform the PR company about the review. I mean,
Yeah, there are some. If there even with Music Street Journal, sometimes if there are some things in a review that I think the artist might not be overly happy about, even though, I mean, because I've learned it's like I can do a very, very positive review, and there are two negative things in it, you know, two problems with it. And I've literally had these guys get back in touch with me and argue with me about it. And
yeah,
it's like, okay, and so it's like if there are too many things that I think somebody might have a problem with, I won't share it on their
I'm pretty
social media either.
I'm pretty fortunate. I haven't had anything like that happen since the very earliest days. Again, it's because it's just such a big, formless gray mass of everything in the digital era that I doubt most bands are aware of all the reviews of them.
Oh
I,
yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
uh,
But what I was going to say too is now I have had people come back and complain to me about the reviews and argue with me about it. But I've also had a couple times I've had an artist come back to me and say, "Hey, I really appreciate the criticism that you said about this." And then they'll ask me questions and say, "Would it be better if I did this? Would it be better if I did that?" And it helps them to improve their craft, which honestly, if somebody's making valid criticisms about your stuff, first, understand it's one reviewer. So it might not mean anything. But if you're hearing sort of the same thing from a lot of people, pay attention. And number two, use it as constructive criticism to do better next time. You know,
that's ideally how it should go. Um, I haven't had too too much of that. Although I had bands that understand. I'll say these guys know they aren't doing anything new, and I'm sure they 99% of the time they're going to agree with that. You know,
yeah, I mean, some bands, there are bands out there that they're not breaking any new ground. They're doing the same stuff that's been done a million times before, but they're doing it really well. And,
yeah,
they're creating new songs in that style that, you know, while they're not all that original, they're still very good.
yeah. The big mass of what I get is middle stuff now. The
Yeah,
very good and the very bad actually don't occupy that much space.
which
But
is what you would expect, actually, just from, a standard
there
gradient. You would
there is
expect,
there is no filter anymore on
no,
on band getting their music out. Uh, it's, a band will consider a success a lot of times in underground if they do 1,000 copies. If they sell 1,000 copies, that's a big. That means what 100,000 copies would have meant in the 1980s.
Well, and I will say this about the difference between the old school of music being released and the new school. Disadvantage, or the advantage is that a lot of people are getting their stuff out there, but there are a lot of disadvantages to that. As bad as the record labels were, and they had their issues for sure, at least having a gatekeeper meant, number one, that there was some sort of quality control. Plus, they would hook you up with a producer who would be an unbiased person who would help you create the best possible version of your music that you could. And I think that that's lacking a lot of times. I think a lot of times, one of the things I've noticed is there's so much stuff where every song sort of sounds the same. And you wouldn't have had that in the days with the producers as much because no producer would have done that. They'd say, no, look, this is all basically the same song. Let's get some different stuff in here.
I remember a quote from Frank Zappa when he was talking just before he died about the change in music, which has only become worse since he's passed. But he said, back in the old days, they had these old guys smoking the cigars in the three-piece suits, and they wouldn't know what was going on, with the music. But once in a while, they would roll the dice and take a chance on something. And he says now you got these guys that are the music experts that are the same as the people that are making it. And he says it's not really an advantage the way they're doing it. They said
No.
it was better with the guys with the cigars and the three-piece suits because they were working. It doesn't hurt to have some kind of a quota to say we're all going to sign 50 good bands this year, not we're going to put out 5,000 records,
Right.
or which is what's happening. I mean, I get probably about 150 promos a week sent to
Oh,
me.
jeez.
Yeah, and it doesn't even scratch the surface. It doesn't even scratch the surface.
And that is precisely that's one of the reasons why I don't accept digital copies, because I don't want to get buried in stuff. I'm buried enough with getting physical copies, so it's like I don't want to
Well,
get even more. I just ignore them.
It's good because I get to hear a lot of stuff, frankly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't. But the PR companies, they know what they're doing. They know we're not going to be able to review every single thing that's sent to me. I mean, I've got entire labels that I've never even looked at that have sent
Well,
stuff.
see, and that's a difference. Is that unless I can't do a positive review of it, I do eventually review everything that comes my way. It takes me a while sometimes, but again, I'm not taking the digital copies, so that's the difference. I don't have all that mass of digital stuff. I'm only getting physical copies. So.
Well, it sure makes a difference when you write a track by track review.
Yeah, they take a lot longer.
Yeah, I couldn't. There's no way we could. Well, most of my writers wouldn't do it that way. They just, and I can't blame them that much. I can do it if I want to, but
honestly, when I started doing that 25 years ago, I had no idea I'd be doing it 25 years later. I probably wouldn't have done that. But then you hear from a lot of bands and you hear from a lot of people who are like really like, thank you for doing the track by track, and they're really, a lot of people are really happy with that and like that. So it's like, I can't, you can't really quit doing it. But on the other hand, it is a lot more work.
Well, at least it shows you got to listen to the album as a whole.
That's true.
Because that. But yeah, I had just yesterday, I had like an obscure band from Spain. They've been around since the early 90s. And the guy personally contacted me and said, would you want to do a review? And I said, well, I can't guarantee it'll be a review that you like, but I'll give it a shot, And I finally sent him back. I posted the review yesterday and got him in, and man, he posted it all over the place, like that. And it was a good. It was a positive review, not 100%
Yeah.
because they're they're not breaking any barriers, and not every song was a home run. Uh, but not too many bands, not too many albums are that way. Uh,
No, that's a rarity.
and that's going to get rarer and rarer. But yeah, so it's when you get feedback from the PR company or the band, that's a pretty good. It's pretty good feeling.
Yeah,
Um,
it is actually. Especially what I like is when you hear back, and I've had several times when musicians have gotten back to me and they're like, wow, you really got the influences there. A lot of people don't pick up on this, or a lot of people don't pick up on that. Um, and I remember one of them was in an interview when I interviewed OTEP, and I asked her if she was a big Jim Morrison fan because I got a lot of Jim Morrison off of her, and she said, "Yeah, a lot of people don't get that," and she was kind of impressed that I picked up on that.
she was I talked to her when we went to that.
Ozfest, yes, I
I,
remember when you interviewed her. I was sitting near there.
she was a she was a scary woman to talk to. I
She,
mean,
you know what, she is. She
we
seems
wound up
like,
hitting it off really good, but
yeah, you know what? If you show her respect and you're a nice person to her, I don't think she has a problem with anybody. I think she's a pretty fair person. It's just you don't want to disrespect that woman.
well, she looked like she could ready to go into the ring and throw you into a cage or something when I
Yeah,
talked to her.
I remember that was another thing when I interviewed her the first time, which was before I'd actually met her. And she said, I asked something about, well, do you have trouble getting respect from, with it being such a male dominated musical style? And she said something like, well, they're going to give me respect if they know what's good for them, something like that. And
Well,
after having met her, I can absolutely see why she would say that.
the thing that kind of broke the ice when I talked to her, as I said, it looks like you get some of your inspiration from ancient cultures, and ancient practices. And she said, "Yes, that's very smart of you to spot that. That is something that influences me." And so I couldn't even say I'm a huge fan of her music, but I can talk to people, unless I'm completely against to if you can find some sort of common ground. Usually, I make sure to ask them about something that has nothing to do with music at all,
Yeah.
and that usually will get the most enthusiastic response most of the time. But
Yeah. And with her, the albums that I have of hers, I like a lot. I don't listen to them all the time, but I do like them a lot. So I would say that, yes, I am a fan, but I haven't really followed her career that much. Um,
I haven't heard much in the last 5 or 6 years.
I haven't either. Although I think I'm Facebook friends with her. But yeah,
I got 50 Facebook friends that are dead. I mean,
I have some of those as well. I think we probably all do. And it's like, I don't know about you, but I sit there and look at them sometimes and think, should I just cut the cord here? And sometimes I do if there's somebody I didn't really know. But then other people, it's like, no, it just doesn't feel right.
well, someday I'm gonna be one of those probably.
All right, let's not talk about that, my friend. We
Well,
all will,
I mean, I'm gonna go if I don't leave the platform. I mean, someday I'm gonna be gone, no matter
well,
how.
yeah, we all are at some point.
And I wonder how many millions of these you know, dead files they got on there. I know
I don't know.
just from my own experience, it's got to be tens of thousands because
And
nobody shuts them off once the person is dead.
no, well, and sometimes they set them up as what do they call them? Memorial accounts or something. But one of the reasons I delete them if I don't know the person very well is I hate when their birthday comes around. I wind up wishing them a happy birthday, and it's like then I find out, oh, they died 3 years ago. Great. So if I don't remember who they are and know that they're dead, I will delete them so that I don't wind up doing that and feeling like an ass.
Yeah, I've found some pretty weird things. I found an old 2010. I found an old post I made when my friend Major Tom Nally, who drew the art for all the early Wormwood covers, and I knew him real well. He was a big musician in Rockford. He died, and not in a very pleasant way. And somehow that old clip come up, and then I looked, and there was a stream of people saying, we're sorry to hear about this. We all like to. I noticed like two of those were people that are now dead themselves.
Oh, geez.
It's yeah,
Kind of
it's
crazy.
yeah, pretty weird. And I wonder what caused that post to float to the top. I have no idea why, but
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. Facebook's weird.
well, I don't spend anywhere near as much time with it as I used to. Scrolling it is just a pain in the ass because like every third post is suggested for you,
Oh, I know.
it's some sort of crap that you got no interest in. So I just stop. I mean, very rarely do it. So I probably miss a lot of things, but
Yeah.
I don't have the patience for it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, sure, to get back on track a little bit, because then and going off track is fun too, so
Yeah,
it's no
yeah.
problem. But what did they say? We've talked about a lot about how you're into metal, and everybody, I'm sure, gets the idea that you're into metal. But why don't you talk about a little bit about how you first got interested in music, and maybe what other types of music you really, really like a lot? And
Well, the first types of music I can remember was very, very young because we're the same age. Uh,
yes,
and just at the very tail end of the 60s, the pop music of the 60s is something that kind of first went into my, like, The Age of Aquarius was a song from that stuck in my head. A lot of, believe it or not, one of the first records I ever played when I was just a tiny kid was a guy, you may know who he is, you may not, Roger Miller.
I
Uh,
know who he is.
you can't roller skate in a buffalo herd. With he did a lot of funny songs. That's the first record I can remember really playing a lot of. And my dad got a lot of jazz and show tune stuff. We used to have a big giant one of those old giant green stereo consoles. I remember it hasn't been a part of our family for 30, 35 years, but I remember it very well. Um, that the old prog rock stuff I really liked from the early 70s. It was a mishmash, but I always liked the guitar, the loud guitar stuff for some reason. Um, Hold Your Head Up by Argent was a big,
The classic.
huge song for me. Um, what I remember more than anything else is I got in 1973 when I was 10 years old. You remember KTEL Music used to
Oh yeah,
play tons of stuff, and they had a record that was called uh, Heavy Metal 24 Electrifying Performances. With
I think I have that on vinyl actually. I think.
it was a weird record, but amazing record. And that's when I really started. That after that, I identified myself as heavy metal fan, even though probably close to 50% of what was on that album
Was not heavy metal. Not
was
even close.
or not some of it not even close. Uh,
Right.
but it was the first. It was the first place I ever heard Deep Purple, Smoke on the Water. That
Tell
made a
you what, you keep talking. I'm gonna wander for a second over here and see if I have that record. I think I do. I can hold it up if I
well.
don't.
I finally got broke after many years, and I tossed it. There was no sense in keeping a broke record. But it's the first place I heard Deep Purple Smoke on the Water. First place I ever heard Black Sabbath, Iron Man. Uh, that's it. That is
Yep,
absolutely it. And it had
it's a double record set.
my favorite all time Yes song was on that Starship Trooper,
Which
and
is
that
which is largely why I own this is because there's a Yes song on it, and I'm a Yes completist. So yeah,
yeah, that's still to this day is my favorite song of theirs that they ever did. But they had the MC5 was on there. Uh,
yeah.
they
Oh, and
had
then they've got the Eagles, and Delaney and Bonnie. That's about as far away from heavy metal as you can get.
well, it was up kind of up tempo rock music, but some of the stuff like Van Morrison, Brown Eyed Girl. What in the world were they thinking when they put that on a heavy metal comp?
The Grateful Dead and Dr. John,
Oh, Dr.
Allman
John.
Brothers.
I like that. The wrong place at the wrong time.
But I mean, it's not heavy metal. It's nothing close to heavy
Well, they
metal.
didn't really know what it was at that. It was
Yeah.
sort of any form of weird, loud music was
Yep.
considered heavy metal. You know, and you talk about Blue Oyster Cult, they weren't on that record, but
No.
in the 70s, they were definitely heavy metal. But now there's no way you would call what they do the heavy metal.
Well,
But
this was actually released on Warner Brothers, and I think Atlantic was part of Warner, which is where Yes was. I have a hunch all these artists were Warner, and BOC was Columbia back then, weren't they?
yeah, they were Columbia for a
Yeah.
long time. I think
Yeah.
I think right up till Imaginos they were on
Sounds
Columbia.
right. Yeah.
Uh, but they had another one of my favorite songs, which wasn't really a heavy metal song, which is "Ride Captain Ride."
Oh
Uh,
yeah, Blues Traveler.
I,
Not yeah, yeah,
I,
that's right.
no, it was like Blues Image,
Blues Image. That's it. Yeah,
Blues Traveler is the guy with the harmonica from the
yeah,
last
that's like a more modern band.
25 years. But they had
Yeah,
some pretty cool stuff. Jimi Hendrix was on it. The Doors was on it. They had a Fog Hat song. The James Gang was pretty good.
yeah.
Uriah.
You really remember this thing, don't you?
Oh yeah, it was a hugely influential record. Uriah Heep was stealing, and up until the time I heard Swedish death metal, that was the heaviest guitar tone I have ever heard in my life. Was Uriah Heep from that era, and especially that song. Um, Speaking of which, I'm just checking out now. Just today, I'm checking out the new Uriah Heep record,
Oh, I haven't heard it.
which is all their stuff after 2000 is great. I mean, people that only talk about their 70s stuff, they don't know what they're missing.
Oh,
And
and people are like, "Well, I don't like that Bernie Shaw guy. He's not the singer, dude. He's been the singer longer than anybody else ever was in Uriah."
he is
So,
fantastic. And I've seen him
yes,
live. I've seen him live. He's an awesome, well, he matches anybody that ever sang for
I,
Uriah Heep.
I interviewed him on the phone once too. Super nice guy.
Yeah. I think I remember that. It was connection with that other guy from Canada. They did a
No,
project.
no, I did that interview. That was the second time I interviewed him. That was an email interview. The first time I interviewed him was like when Sonic Origami had just come out, I think, and I interviewed him by phone then. And he
Well,
was really, really nice, very pleasant guy to talk to. In
yeah.
fact, I think if I remember right, he for some reason I think he's the one who missed the time for the interview and had to reschedule, and he apologized to me over and over about it.
Well, yeah, I don't have any trouble believing that. The big myth is that a lot of these guys are hard to talk to. I found the vast majority of people would be very easy to speak to and do an
Yeah, I
interview.
agree.
Some come across a little bit more gruff than others, but even those are colorful interviews. They've been very. I mean, I can count on less than one hand the ones that I've had a bad experience with. Now there's some that have stood me up altogether. So you you can't judge that, but
I can only think of one that was an unpleasant interview for me, and I won't say who it was, but I will say I didn't wind up running the interview.
yeah, I only had one that I never ran. I mean, I will say who it was. It was Udo Dirkschneider, uh,
Ah,
who used to be an Accept, and it was an email interview. And I mean, when you get back 1 and 2 word answers, whenever the answers are shorter than the questions, it's not good. And that's one I just pulled the plug on. I said there's no sense in running this.
well, I know this one that I did. It was a phone interview, and I know you've interviewed the guy, and you didn't have a bad experience, but I did. And you know what? The reason I'm not going to say anything, their tour was just getting started, and perhaps he was having a very bad day because he came across as
That can
very
always
disinterested.
happen. That can always
You
happen.
know, and so I'm not gonna say who it was because obviously, like I said, you had a good experience with him.
I'm about
And
90% sure who you're talking about.
yeah, you probably are. I mean, he's got a rather bad reputation for interviews, but you did really well with him, so I'm
Well,
going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
if it's the guy I'm thinking of, he was come out pretty good, but he wasn't what I would call a barrel of laughs. Uh,
We'll talk about it later off
yeah,
of public.
yeah. But well, we've been this going for an hour now. I don't know if that's how long you wanted it or.
Oh, it doesn't really matter to me. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about, or
Well, we covered quite a bit of stuff.
yeah? I
So
think the whole purpose of these is I figure, you know what, everybody reads the reviews and the articles at Music Street Journal, but they tend to not know who everybody is. And I thought we're just going to try to give a little bit of an idea of who the people are who are doing these articles. Um, I think, maybe the readers would like that.
well, I, I can't be the judge, but
We've got a lot of interesting characters, my friend, and you're one of my best friends, so I will give you high praise. So the funny thing is, two of the guys that I'm going to be doing coming up, I have literally never talked to on the phone, never met them in person. So it's going to be kind of interesting. John Pierpoint and Larry Towering, I've just emailed with those guys. So it'll be kind of interesting when I get to chat with them. You and Greg Olma, I've met in person. Greg, not as many times as you. Obviously, you and I have spent a lot of time together.
I think I only met him in the flesh once, but we correspond quite a bit. Uh,
Yeah, Greg's a good guy. Greg was another one I met at a show. I wound up, we were both shooting a concert, and I don't remember what concert, and we met in the photo pit and exchanged information. And, since then, think we've probably seen each other in person maybe 5 or 6 times, but
he's one of the most reliable guys that
very reliable guy.
works for me.
Yeah.
Once in a while, it's like pulling teeth, but with him, it works great. Um,
Yeah.
I yeah, I'm interested a lot. I haven't met a lot of the guys that I probably never will really. You know,
Yeah, when you're all over the world and stuff. I mean, like John Pierpoint is in England. I don't
yeah.
think I'll ever meet him. Larry Towering, at least, is in Portland, Oregon, so maybe someday I'll meet him in person, but who knows?
All I think now finally all the guys writing for Wormwood are American. We had a couple. We had an Englishman and we had crazy Jens from Denmark was a writer in the early days, but yeah,
Jens Hellroot, was it?
yeah.
Oh,
I still he's a crazy cat, that's for sure. He spends more time banned on Facebook than he does not banned. Uh,
Wow.
but yeah, so it's just one of those things. But I got some really great interviews out of him. Poison Idea, he did a lot of punk rock stuff for me, and I do kind of miss that. I don't really have as strong a connection to that as I used to. I wouldn't mind somebody picking up the slack, but it's just you just have to see how things go.
Yep.
But
Yep.
yeah, well, I think that pretty much is all that's off the top of my head. I don't know what
Okay.
from you.
Well, that pretty much winds up. Why don't you tell everybody where Wormwood Chronicles is? Because Wormwood is Mike's main publication. I said we met. We were both doing an interview. We met. Well, apparently we met before that, but I didn't remember meeting before that. But that was when we met at BOC was when we exchanged information and started collaborating together. And Mike started contributing to Music Street Journal. I started contributing to Wormwood. And but why don't you tell them what Wormwood is? And
Well, it's kind of like a grab bag of things. It's gets the reputation of being a metal publication, and it is that for sure because there's a ton of those, but it's a lot more musically diverse than people would realize. There's a fair amount of prog rock in there, mostly due to your contribution. There's some punk stuff, and just straight hard rock. We also do a lot of movie reviews, underground or what you call psychotronic movies. Um, some talk about the paranormal. We've got some paranormal articles. I do some stuff that revolves around pro wrestling every now and then. Well, it doesn't come up that much, but it does come up, and we talk to some pretty big names in that world. Um, it's just a real hodgepodge. It's updated weekly. So every week you should see something a little bit different. As a matter of fact, tonight I'm going to do the best of 2022 lists. I asked all my writers to give me their top 10 for the year 2022, and we put that up every year. And it's the most time consuming thing to put up, but it's the most interesting. So that's what it's going to be this week. The URL is Wormwood Chronicles is one word, and then it's .net. For the first 10 years, it was .com, but for the last, I think close to 20 now, it's been .net. So you can find that. It's updated. You'll see stuff that Gary writes under his name, A Dark Star. And the stuff that I write is Dr. Abnormality. Greg Olma that we talked about, he's Colonel Angus.
yep,
Um, we've got some others. One of my big writers, Lord Randall, he actually writes for Zero Tolerance magazine, which is a newsstand mag. So he's pretty well versed. I could go into all of it, but the best thing is to check and actually look it up tomorrow so you'll see the list of current contributors and the types of what they thought. So that'll be my plug for that.
okay. And I will plug the 25th anniversary book from Music Street Journal, which you can pick up at lulu.com/spotlight/strange sound, where you can always find our articles at musicstreetjournal.com. And by the way, this book includes top 10 lists as well for all the people who contributed, including Mike and I. But those are strictly print for Music Street Journal. So the only way you can see those is buying the book. Well, you can see Mike's and mine and Greg Olma's at Wormwood tomorrow. But so that's pretty much it, I think. And we'll I hope everybody got a chance to put a face to someone who they probably read their stuff. And we'll sign off here.
Your monitor.
What's that?
if my face don't break your monitor.
You're fine, Mike. Do me a favor. When we sign off here, hang on for just a second, and I'll tell you who that guy was. We'll see if you're on the same page.
All right.
All right, thanks everyone, and tune in for the next one, which I can't remember what day it is, but it'll be Greg Olma, I think. I think that's the next one on maybe Tuesday. I could be wrong, but I haven't posted on the Facebook site page though. So thank you, and till next time.